Hello guys, I'm on this channel, and I'm very sorry I've not been able to film any videos. I've just been busy with other things. I've been lazy doing some stuff and trying to finish this MASH project, which kind of enjoyed it, so I wanted to finish that. So I've just been busy and kind of lazy at the same time, so just hadn't had any time for videos. So now I'm going to say MCU trilogies ranked. We're also going to have two more rankings, Guardians of the Galaxy members ranked, and MCU tier list of movies. So without further ado, I think we can get right into this one. Coming in number 5, we have the Ant-Man trilogy. This one is frustrating because on one hand, I think the first two are pretty fun, like small little adventures coming off of the two Avengers movies, those being Age of Ultron and Infinity War, and I actually really enjoy the first one. It's probably, at this point, it's probably midway in the list because I think I pushed a couple of them higher, but it's still a fun MCU movie. So Ant-Man the Wasp it's alright. I think it's still pretty fun too. It's not as good though. And then when you get to Quantumania, there's a lot of problems with it. I feel like it's not. I have a ton of issues with it. I'm not really going to go into it much here, but I'll just say if they sort of made this more of an Ant-Man movie, and like Scott Lang had much of a character arc where like there's this whole thing where like, and you could have made this one like actually pretty emotional. Like they could have done sort of, I'm not exactly like this, but like if you sort of James Gunnified this thing where like you had this whole story about Cassie and Scott and like a father and daughter relationship, and then throw that in the movie. Like this is one of those movies I feel like I could see in this extended cut. I'll talk about it in my MCU tier list, but it's fun, it's entertaining, but like the tone's all over the place. You have that MODOK you Corey Stoll back in there, which I thought that was a dumb decision, and then like it just feels like sort of written by an MCU community. And like I heard that like 1 month before the movie came out, they redid the ending, which that I also didn't like, but I'll go into that later. So as a whole, it doesn't really feel like Scott grows all that much. He grows up in the first one, but like he's kind of the same in all three, and then like it doesn't feel like a continuation or a story of anything. So like in the end, it's like, I mean, I bet they're doing a fourth film because it doesn't make sense to close out Scott's arc on this one, because like, and he doesn't even win the Avengers or anything. So like I think Quantumania is just kind of a disappointing one in general. But the first two are fun, I guess, and I think it's a pretty good trilogy of movies. I guess none of them are bad, but like the one that's pretty good, one that's alright, and the one that's kind of meh, okay. So there you go. But I do think the characters are fun here. In particular, you got Paul Rudd, you got Michael Douglas as Hank Pym, Evangeline Lilly as Hope Van Dyne, and the standout of the last couple the last one is Michelle Pfeiffer as Janet. And I think the whole family group dynamic, I actually think, and it gets better and better in each movie. That's one of my favorite things in Quantumania is the characters bouncing off each other. I thought was fun too. And I think they're always kind of fun to revisit, in particular the first two, but Quantumania is kind of what sort of ruined this trilogy a little bit. But now we got the Iron Man trilogy. I think the first one is a top 10, almost, I don't know if it's top 5, it might be number 6 MCU movie of all time. It kicked off the MCU. It started what now became sort of the template for most superhero movies nowadays. And you see the first Iron Man, I just think it's a classic film. I think it's amazing. You see this man in a suit trying to escape a cave, and then that turns into the biggest movie franchise of all time. And just kind of the thought of that is very interesting in general. I've always really enjoyed the first Iron Man. Second one, I think it's kind of like Quantumania, where I feel like it's fun and entertaining, but there's a lot going on in the movie, and like it's all pretty messy, and the villains, although unlike that movie, I think the villains are not good here. At least Whiplash isn't. So, not a big fan of Iron Man 2. And then Iron Man 3, I actually rewatched it pretty recently. I think that one's great. Like, I don't think it's quite top 10. I think it's right under that, probably. It's just, I love what they did with Tony, where like they took him out of the suit and sort of did that with him. And I think the thing about these three movies, I feel like they sort of see a bit of a progression in Tony's character arc a little bit. But you kind of have to watch the Avengers sort of for this, so, because then you understand the whole PTSD thing. And I think in the end, if you ended off Tony's character arc there, it would have been a little odd, but I think it would work, because I think Robert Downey Jr. was debating whether he wanted to come back in the role. So I think that would have been actually a pretty good way to close out. But obviously we got Age of Ultron, and they didn't even acknowledge Iron Man 3, so it feels like it's kind of like outside the MCU. But as a movie itself, I think it actually really works. I think it's a lot of fun. And then you see like progression here. I think the trilogy is fairly consistent for the most part, except Iron Man 2. I always really enjoyed Iron Man 3, and I think the first one's also just a classic. So this one, it's a pretty good trilogy of movies. But if like I watched the way I'm kind of basing this off is I watched all three back to back. Would you see a full character arc with Tony? Sort of, but as a whole, I feel these next three are all pretty close. But yeah, overall, I do enjoy this one, but not as good as the other three. Coming in number three is going to be the Spider-Man Tom Holland trilogy, Spider-Man Home trilogy, whatever you call it. Overall, I think it's fun. It's entertaining. All three of these movies are pretty rewatchable. In particular, Homecoming. I think that one's a lot of fun, and and the villain's great. Even though like gadget him up, I've kind of gone over that, but it just kind of presents a teenage side of Spider-Man, which we didn't really see in Garfield or Maguire's trilogies or duology, whatever you want. Their movies. And then I just think Homecoming is just a lot of fun here. It's a great villain, great start to this little trilogy. Far From Home, it's a bit of a downgrade. I hate the plot where like Tony makes glasses for a high schooler, which that doesn't work. And Mysterio's alright, but I think that one I like. It's entertaining, but it has a lot of issues. And then No Way Home kind of also has a lot of issues too, where it's a little lazy in the setup. But once you get past pretty much, I think the setup's a lot. Even the setup for like the rest of it, where like she's spotting the villains and catching them, I think that's a lot of fun. And then especially as you go on to the final battle, it's just classic Spider-Man stuff. And it's just a great homage to all the Spider-Man stuff that we all love and works perfectly in there. So that in general, I think works very well here. And yeah, I thought No Way Home was just an overall great one. A little overrated, but I do think it is still a fun one. And so yeah, this trilogy, you see a bit of a progression of Peter Parker where you see him in Homecoming, and then see him in Homecoming, and then Far From Home, he's sort of starting. You don't really see much in Homecoming in Far From Home, but like once you get to No Way Home, you see a much more of a progression of Peter Parker's character arc here, and that's where he learns with great power comes great responsibility. Like there was no Uncle Ben. I thought that always really worked about it and made this trilogy a lot more different. So that kind of concluded his origin story. And I'm excited to see what else they do with this character in general. So for now, I think this trilogy is number 3. Just because I don't think this Spider-Man trilogy, it doesn't feel like classic Spider-Man as a whole. I mean, there's classic Spider-Man moments in general, like in particular, like when he's swinging through New York on Christmas, when pretty much everything in No Way Home that just works in general, some of the swinging scenes in Far From Home. But I just don't, as a Spider-Man trilogy, I don't think it fully works. But as an MCU trilogy, I think it works a lot better. But, yeah, let's move on. Coming in number 2 is going to be the Captain America trilogy. If we were just basing off pure quality where they'd average out my list, this is number 1 for sure. I mean, for Winter Soldier and Civil War both in top 5, and First Avengers right outside my top 10. But like all 3 of these movies are really good. They have some of the best action in the MCU. You got the Winter Soldier bridge sequence, the Winter Soldier final battle, the Winter Soldier opening sequence, the Winter Soldier car chase, the Civil War car chase, the Civil War airport fight, the Civil War final battle, the Civil War opening sequence in Lagos, the First Avenger Brooklyn running chase sequence, the sequence in the final battle in First Avenger, the whole rescuing sequence in First Avenger in the middle, the which one am I missing in Winter Soldier? The elevator sequence. And all 3 of these movies just have incredible action. They're well filmed. They're all really good. In particular, Winter Soldier and Civil War. And I love the origin story in First Avenger. I think it works very well. Red Skull, not the best villain, but whatever. And yeah, all 3 of these movies are really good. But do they tell a clear arc for Steve Rogers? Not really, because like I feel like you need the Avengers movies to really flesh out its arc a bit more, and they give a lot of stuff for Steve Rogers to do between all 3, in particular Endgame. So yeah, I don't think you have a full-on Captain America story between these 3 movies, but you know what, I think that's okay. Like all 3 of these movies are really good. They serve their place in the MCU very well, and yeah, I think all of that all really works in general. And yeah, this trilogy, I think it's a great trilogy of movies. I think, yeah, this is one of the best comic book trilogies of all time. I don't think it's number 1 on this list just because I feel like there's not a full story between Captain America and the characters in his life, and like you get other MCU characters. So, but it works mainly. And there's nothing wrong with this. Now we have Guardians of the Galaxy at number 1. I thought this one would be number 1 when I was making this list because, well, let's just put it here. It tells a full-on story arc between all 3 of these movies. You see these characters grow and change over time. And it all works really well. I'm not the biggest fan of Volume 2. I think it's pretty good. I've started every time I watch it, I tend to like it a little bit more, but I don't like the ego stuff really. And then Volume 1 and Volume 3 are just both great. In particular, Volume 1, it's my favorite MCU movie at the moment. And it doesn't show any signs of moving there. It's just so much fun. There's so much fun. You're just in with these characters all the time. It's emotional, it's entertaining, and what's the word? Exciting. And it as a whole, I think it just works very well. And then you have Volume 3, which is it's just kind of this epic closure of the Guardians and progresses these characters to see now they're at where they sort of had the sort of bandage wrap. That's what their family was. And now you see them at the end. Now they've grown and changed and now they know what to want to do with their lives at the moment. So I think all of that worked very well. Volume 3 is great. I'm gonna go see it again before I rank all the MCU movies, which I'm planning on doing that this weekend. So there you go. And yeah, all three movies are great. You see clear progression of arcs throughout the movies. You have Star-Lord, who was abducted at a young age, and then he's been running his entire life, and then in the end he realizes he to go back to his grandpa to sort of maybe settle down. Obviously to the Guardians again, but like there's that Mantis, who's been a slave for Ego, eventually comes to a point where she has to find out what she wants to do, find her own life. You have Drax, who had his children taken from him at a bit of a not on the younger side. Then you see him progress here, where he's become Drax the Destroyer, out for revenge from Guardians 1 and 2, and then even Infinity War, he's out for revenge for both Ronan and Thanos. And then post Infinity War Endgame, you see the character of Drax. Or even to take out Infinity War Endgame, now he's like not for revenge anymore, and then Nebula brings up a line where it's like, you're not meant to be a destroyer, you're meant to be a dad. And that worked very well for me. And you have Nebula, where like she's like at the beginning she's like this kind of psycho-ish character who wants to just kill Gamora, and then you sort of realize through nuance, which I think you kind of need Endgame to feel like complete her arc a little bit, but I think it's done well. And then you see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, they become sisters, and then Volume 3, now she wants her to back in the Guardians because you see what's going on there, and I think her arc I think worked very well especially when you watch Endgame. And yeah, I think Nebula's become one of the better characters throughout time. And then you got what's it called? You got Rocket, or in the first one if you start back at a young age, who's abducted by this what's it called? The high evolutionary for testing and just to create this perfect world, and then you see him being tortured throughout his entire childhood, and then he escapes and then doesn't know what to do with himself, and sort of it's just kind of frustrating. It kind of makes you rethink some of the scenes in Volume 2 where like he steals those batteries very impulsively, and then you see him go on like in Volume 1 he's with you see him with Groot as his bounty hunter, sort of trying to live his life, and then you see him become the Guardians and becomes a much happier person in general. You see that go on, and then once you get to Volume 3, he's sort of, I guess, realized all of this, and then you see how he feels, and he said that I love that line where it's like, I'm done running. And yeah, I don't know if I'm missing a group. Doesn't really have one, but Groot's Groot. It's fun, and overall, I love what James Gunn did with these characters. They're entertaining, they're fun, and throughout these movies, they never really did the MCU thing where they interject humor into the middle action sequences without disturbing the tension, and that's a big issue of the MCU at the moment, in particular with Love and Thunder, Quantumania, and Shang-Chi did that a little bit. But like here, it was entertaining. These three movies, they're entertaining, they're fun. They have great soundtracks. I don't even know why I didn't mention that. So it all works in the end. If you haven't seen Volume 3, I recommend checking it out. I probably just spoiled it for you, but as a whole, all three of these movies are great. They end off on a very satisfying note. And I think with time, I think Volume 2 might even move further up. So, really enjoy all three of these movies. And yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I talked a lot, but yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you guys next time. Be ready for Guardians of the Galaxy members ranked and MCU movies ranked or tier list. And I'll see you guys next time. Adios.